You're listening to episode 934 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is being offered by our Deacon Brett Edmondson. He'll be preaching a homily entitled, Welcoming the Stranger, given on the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2024.
Good morning, everybody. Well, as Father Bill was grousing earlier, he's saying, it's so hot outside and so nice in here. So he told me that I am to preach as long as I possibly can. So just want you to know. So where I grew up, south of Chicago, there was a kind of, I guess you could call it maybe like a low-grade verbal bigotry that was pretty common, right? Certainly and sadly, black people bore the brunt of it, but there was enough to go around, derogatory or pejorative nicknames for just about every ethnicity that you could think of. So my own family wasn't immune to this, and though my dad was probably one of the kindest people around, it wasn't shocking to hear him dismiss somebody that he disagreed with by calling them a crazy, you fill in the blank, right? That was just the way the people in our kind of hard-nosed, blue-collar part of the world spoke at that time. Here's the funny thing, though. Most of my friends were Anglo, but not all. And when Dad would, from time to time, get to know one of my black friends or one of my Asian friends or even one of my, God forbid, Italian friends, it was fascinating to watch that ethnic animus recede and his characteristic natural graciousness emerge. As in his mind, my friends began to move from the category of other into the category of, he's a pretty good guy, isn't he? Right? I saw that happen a number of times. Well, friends, in the Old Testament, one of the prime directives that God hammers home with his people over and over again is to welcome the stranger. Welcome the stranger. First, because the Jewish people themselves had once been foreigners and immigrants, and God wanted them to never forget that. But second, because God's revelation often comes to us through the stranger, through what's foreign to us. In fact, sometimes the only way God, who is utterly other, can get through our prejudices and our preconceived notions is by coming to us through somebody very different than ourselves. That's why he sends Amos in the first reading. Amos wasn't a religious professional. He wasn't educated. He wasn't even from Israel. He was a poor Jew from south of Jerusalem, a stranger and a shepherd. But unlike the professionals in Israel, he could see what was coming, and he had the courage to name it. When Jesus came as Messiah, one of his first tasks was to gather in God's scattered people. That's why he sends out the 12 in our gospel today, to gather in the tribes. Today, that mission falls to the church, which I think is a bit dismaying because, as you know, the church's voice, at least its official voice right now, is floundering, drowned out by continuing scandals, internal divisions, irrelevance, and inability to speak the language of the people. And that's why, friends, I think that mission of Jesus, gathering in, that now falls to us, the baptized. In a world where God is ignored, a world that's not only rejected, but has pretty much forgotten the language of faith, a world where the official church is so hard to hear, God hasn't given up. He's still reaching out to his scattered children, but now he sends you, as he once sent the 12, to be the strangers through whom he speaks. Think of it like this. Some of you might remember I think it was in 1987, the Steve Martin movie Roxanne. I know. Those of you under 50 are thinking, Roxanne? Who? What? Was she part of the Marvel Universe? What's up with that, right? Anyway, it's not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie. Watch it sometime when you're bored. It's based on the play Cyrano de Bergerac about a gifted but physically disfigured man, Charlie, who's in love with this beautiful woman, Roxanne, but who thinks that Roxanne could never love him because of his disfigurement. So instead, what Charlie does is he woos her through the words and the friendship of a younger, more attractive friend who's caught Roxanne's eye. So it's kind of silly, but it's fun, right? Friend is a bit awkward. So there are these scenes where Charlie hides in the bushes next to him and surreptitiously feeds him his lines, the right words to say as he talks to Roxanne. And there are other scenes where Charlie writes love letters in his friend's name to Roxanne. Remember when people wrote love letters? So in the end, as you would guess, Roxanne discovers the ruse and learns who's really behind the words and the love that has so moved her own heart. And to make a long story short, she and Charlie end up living happily ever after, when that was still a thing in Hollywood. Well, friends, here's the point. I think there are a lot of Roxannes out there whom God is desperately trying to reach, and he's asking you, his friends, to be the ones through whom he reaches. Through your words, but even more through your love and your friendship and your kindness. God knows there are plenty of good people in every one of our lives, right? People for whatever reason don't know God or who've been alienated from God. God's asking you to be the go-between, to make the introduction, to let your friendship embody his friendship, even if that other person never discovers it this side of the grave. You know, there's an ancient Latin phrase that goes like this: extra ecclesiam nulla salus. Want to try that with me once? We'll do it one word at a time. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. See, you guys are Latin scholars. There you go. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. It means outside the church, there is no salvation. Now, there have probably been libraries written about what that actually means, but I would propose at least this meaning. It's not just Pope Francis and the bishops and the clergy who are church. Each one of you is church, bona fide members of the body of Christ, in whom Jesus lives and moves and interacts with the world. And that means that your relatives, your friends, your colleagues, those you hold in love and affection, are held in the love and affection of Jesus himself, whether they realize it or not. So your love is a bridge for God's love. I don't think we take that seriously enough in our everyday lives, that our relationships, even our everyday, ordinary, garden variety friendships, are potentially vehicles of grace, avenues of salvation, windows through which God's love can reach through and touch those who don't know him. Church for the unchurched. So think about that this week. When you're online, or you're about to get into a political debate, or you run into that annoying neighbor, you are God's prophet, God's messenger, in a clandestine sort of way. Your words, your thoughtfulness, your willingness to befriend can be sacraments of the saving love of God himself.
And a big thank you goes to Deacon Brett Edmondson for his homily for this week. And I want to thank all of you for listening. If you have any comments or questions, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. Also, if you want to subscribe to this podcast, just hit subscribe. It is also on, I believe, YouTube, so that's another way to do it. But I typically get most of my distribution through iTunes. But again, it's many different places. Anyhow, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.